Recording. All right, so we are recording this session. It will be posted to our YouTube page, and everyone who registered for the webinar will also get the direct link to it automatically. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Rebecca Antel. I'm the Youth Services Consultant at the South Carolina State Library. And our webinar today is all about how to do virtual programming. A little bit of housekeeping, of course. First of all, please keep your microphones muted if you're not actively asking a question. Feel free to post your questions in the chat. Let's see what else. Your mute and unmute buttons are down at the bottom of your screen. And I have the feeling we had enough interest in this session, depending on how much material Emily gets through today, we may try and schedule her for a follow-up or an advanced webinar next month as well. So be thinking about questions, comments, what else you would like to know as we go through our material today. And if we don't get to it, we'll work on part 2. Thank you all, and Emily, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Rebecca, and thank you. I'm excited to see all of you today, and thanks for being here. We're going to talk about virtual programming, and like Rebecca said, this is a more broad overview today, but any questions you have, put them in the chat. We will try our best to get to them, and if you don't, we can dive deeper, and I'll share my contact information. And I love talking about this stuff. I love brainstorming, and this is something that is constantly changing and constantly developing, and that's what we're doing here today, just trying to figure it out and trying to see how we can make this work and keep our customers and ourselves happy too, because we matter too. Of course. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and you should be able to see, and then I'm going to present it. It is loading. Okay, if someone, can you just nod or give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen okay? Yeah, sounds good. Okay, today we are going to talk about virtual programming development, focusing on kids. And I saw we have a lot of teen people here, so we'll try to talk about that a bit too, and we'll see. And my name is Emily Morochek, maiden name Basie. I'm a freelance children's librarian in the Chicago suburbs. I'm still figuring out what that means, but I worked full-time up to having my second baby a few months ago. And now I'm substituting libraries and working in a different type of way because I love libraries and I love helping children. And that's what's something that's really awesome about this virtual world is you can find very creative ways of making it work. And that's one of the huge things we've been doing since this pandemic, and all of you have been doing since the beginning. So right now we are going to start with a word cloud. If you can go to menti.com and enter the code 20927316. That is menti.com 20927316. And then you can type in what word or words come to mind when you hear the phrase virtual programming. So that can be anything you think, 20927316 at menti.com. And yeah, type in the words and then you can hit submit. And you will see it should come together with our word cloud, maybe. Yep, scary, virtual, tricky to pull off, online, not face-to-face. Yes, that is true. Book talk. And as you can see, what I'm using right now is this is a way we're having people collaborate and put something together. And this is something you can kind of think of different things you can use while virtual. So you can see that people can add and getting results in real time. So this is a Mentimeter word cloud, and everything you are submitting, I am on the presenter side, and then I'm seeing what you type in. And then you have this visual available after, which is kind of another cool example of things we can use and ways to engage your audience, because that is something I always struggle with, is actually engaging and having everyone participate. So I'm going to get back to my chat on my screen. And I see the number there. So hard to promote, no feedback, YouTube, limiting, removed, distant, and all of that is very true and very hard. And that's what we're going to talk about. And that's finding things like this can be ways to get people talking. But as you know, not everyone might be participating in this, and that's okay. But that can also be hard when I'm not having the people and seeing them. And I know right now on my screen, I'm struggling to be able to see you and see the chat and see this. And that's something I'm using 2 screens, 2 computers right now, which helps me be able to see things a little more, but it's a lot different than that face-to-face, as you all know. So now I'm going to get back to my slides. And my sharing paused, of course. Another fun of the technology. So give me 1 second here as I figure that out and we get our troubleshooting happening. But I think everything we said about the virtual programming is that it's definitely hard, and it's definitely this new added challenge. And something I'm going to get to in just a minute too is that as we're doing it and as we're going, you need to give yourself grace. And that can be one of the hardest things to do. But something to remember is that you make mistakes in person, and things are going to happen even more in virtual because you have such added additional everything to depend on. So now I am back presenting and I just need to share again. So give me 1 second. So, okay, give me a thumbs up when you can see my screen. We're here, we got our word cloud. And now I am on our virtual programming journey. Can someone type in the chat that they can see my screen again? I want to make sure everyone can see it. Yes, okay, awesome, thank you. So going back, we are past a year since the pandemic now. Already hard to believe. And we have been through a lot. Everyone has. And I remember it started with the shutdown panic and all the libraries closing and not even knowing what to do. And then it went to the how do we do this? Can we do programs? How do we reach our people? What should happen? To wanting to try everything, to doing so many programs at once, to having something every day, to trying on Facebook and YouTube and Zoom and everywhere. And then there was a bit of a pause and looking at our quality and looking at what we are doing and who we were reaching and how we were doing that. And then it really came to a lot of fatigue. And I think we're in that right now. And I don't know if that's ever going to end. And thinking, are we there at, is it over? When can we get back to normal? And that leads us to the important, let's reevaluate, let's think, where do we go from here? What are we doing? People are starting to get vaccinated. We are getting to a new normal. But what's important to remember is it's a new normal. We did learn a lot in this past year and a lot has changed. And that's what's important to think about moving forward, is how we can take these lessons and how we can change virtual programming. So we'll think about what this virtual programming is. And for today's purposes, I say it is remote. Someone said in the word cloud, not face-to-face. And that can be programming that is done synchronously and asynchrony. I hate saying those words, and that's why I didn't put them on the slide. And simultaneously live when we're all here at once, or individually, the programming people can do and watch on their own time. And something I think is very important, and I say every day, is virtual programming is here to stay. Even as we're getting into summer and we're getting into outdoor programs, and even as we can begin doing people in person, this is something that is important. It can reach a lot more people. Yes, Katie, it can be recorded, it can be replayed on demand. This programming is so much more accessible to people we know. I know I am a new mom and I am able to go to story time every day with my kids, and we would not be able to get out of the house every day. That would never happen before. And I love being able to attend these different story times as I'm breastfeeding, as I'm changing diapers, and not having to do the added step of getting dressed and in the car and out the door, which is such a struggle. I am still late to virtual programs with my kids because even when we're at home, it's still hard. So it's important to embrace it. We're here today to try to make it less complicated and less scary and find things that we can do feasibly to reach our patrons. Yes, as Kate says, it requires connectivity and bandwidth, which can be hard. And so we're going to look at 2020 programming versus 2021 programming. And as you can see here, we have the who, the what, the where, the when, the why. We're reaching children and families. We're doing story times. We're doing book clubs. We're doing outreaches. And you see, everything stayed the same, promoting literacy, who you are reaching. But then what really changed was you're going even farther from your community. You're going to the world because so many people can see this. You also, your time is not just the time people are there. It's also the recorded, the replay, the more availability for times because you have nights and weekends and it's easier to do more. And something that I think is always important to remember is that if more is being required of you, then that is what people need. You need more hours, you need more staff, you need more. You cannot be expected to do more and reach more without having more resources yourself. And that is something to tell your supervisors, to tell your bosses that we are reaching farther and being stretched further. And that needs to be recognized. It is so, so important. And now we can take a moment, and a lot of today is thinking about ideas and thinking about virtual programming. And if you want to put in the chat what virtual program you did that you are the most proud of, what is something that you had good feeling? And if there isn't anything, that's okay too. It's okay if you don't have one, but what's something that you had fun doing? And it didn't have to be perfect. I am seeing Stick Together from Maggie. And is that where everyone contributes to a decal? If you want to explain that a little more, I know I've seen where people work to make a big collage, but I might be totally off base here. I also know that the big collage can be something that's done digitally too, where everyone puts the stickers and are working together.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. Stick Together is kind of like a paint by numbers, but instead you're sticking stickers on in this case, a virtual board. It has some room for error as it doesn't allow you to stick stickers in wrong places.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also good for younger kids because it uses letters instead of numbers. And so it starts that process of recognizing numbers letters, and younger kids can participate as well as older kids. So it has taken off really well with my library system here. And they are super cheap to buy. I think I got 10 codes for like $13. And each code's good for one sticker board. So I share one a month. And the first time that you buy anything from them, they send you 2 free codes. So I got basically a whole year's worth of planning for $13.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing. And if you can put the link to that in the chat, the website, I know people would really appreciate that. So thank you. And that sounds really fun. And I'm seeing a lot of great stuff in the chat. Different people are posting 5-part series about books from the States. That sounds fun. Rewriting the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. I know one of the favorite ones I've done is a virtual field trip with about 3rd to 5th graders. And we did one where we visited animals and we visited different zoos. And then the kids got to vote in a poll on Zoom about what animal they wanted to see. And then we would go to the live cam of that animal. and be able to talk and look at that. So that was a really fun one. And also just going to different museums, going virtually. I really enjoyed that. Does anyone else want to talk a little about something they did? You're welcome to, or to keep typing in the chat. And just a reminder, the chat will be saved and sent out to everyone because I see really good stuff here. And I'm seeing, yes, recorded story times. I'm seeing chapters of a book on Fridays, lots of fun ideas. So thank you so much for sharing. And that's something, if you see anyone in the chat that has something you want to learn more about, feel free to reach out about them, because that's something I think is huge, is reaching out and learning more about what different libraries are doing. And here we have a whole bunch of ideas that I put on the screen right now. And something that I think is important is to think deeper about what programs you're doing and think about how you can expand on these programs. If anything that you can do can kind of take it to the next level. And I've done story times where you can do props for pickup. And I was able to get a shaker egg and a scarf, and that was given to my kid. Or I've also done where they did a theme story time and then you could pick up the craft at the library and you picked up the craft to do with it, which was helpful. One I went to my son was if you give a mouse a cookie, and by that I mean if you give a pig a pancake, sorry, and then they actually had a dressed up pig in the parking lot. And later that day, we were able to see the pig in the parking lot. And then they gave us a little baggie of goodies, and that included a prepackaged pancake from the pig, which was fun. So we look at book clubs, and something my book club had talked about was adding in a central hub, and they wanted to make a Google Classroom. This was the kids, they wanted to do it. They wanted to do a Google Classroom for the book club so we could put different resources. So they could put links to different things and look at it when we weren't actually doing the live portion of book club. And then looking at gaming, it's seeing how can you go deeper. There's a lot of really good guides from the board game Distance Gaming and information on there, how you can kind of do different games online, seeing what you can do fandom based. I've seen themed trivias that have been really fun. Myself, we were able to play Sushi Go using gaming, so that was really fun. Oh, I see a question on Dial a Story from Jennifer. Yes. At my former library, we did that, and you are able to set up one of your phone lines. You can work to do that, and then you call in and you get a pre-recorded story. So one of your librarians is saying something, and the way we've gotten around copyright for that was either getting special permission from the publisher for that title, or also doing a folk tale for Dial a Story. So having one of your librarians doing Hansel and Gretel. And oh, great, Naomi, if you want to type in too how you do your Dial a Story, I'm sure that would be appreciated. And yes, digital escape rooms, many of people have been doing. And yes, I've done my digital escape rooms using Google Form, but I've also seen some that are on a Google room where you can click around more in the room. And it can be a little harder technology wise, but can also be fun. And then I've seen for the younger kids, a choose your own story. When I saw through the Deerfield Library in Illinois, they did a Pete the Cat choose your own story. And I'm looking at someone's Pete the Cat, hi, watching me as I say this. And they are able to help Pete find his missing buttons and kind of pick through pictures, which makes it good for younger. And collaboration is something that can be huge. I've seen really great things about how people have worked with different libraries, different schools, different park districts. And observing is something that I have really enjoyed doing with my kids, but also there are so many story times, there are so many programs and programs for older kids on Zoom. And a lot of librarians are really open to letting someone observe as long as you just stay muted and keep your screen off so the kids don't think you're too creepy. And that can be a good way to see what other people are doing and to really learn more up to a new level. Yes, copyright with Dial a Story, Tricia. One way of doing that is doing folk tales and doing things that are in public domain. And another way is you can get express permission from a publisher if you tell them the exact title you're doing and working with the publisher from the exact title. And then paid presenters, that's been really fun. I've enjoyed going to different paid presenters, and a lot of them have been adapting to virtual programs. We did a virtual magic show for my husband's birthday, author visits, musicians. I've been seeing Little Miss Anne. I've been seeing her online. And Lori Berkner's been doing some online. And if there's anyone you guys have done at your library, any paid presenters that you want to put in the chat, that would be great. And I think what is so cool is that we are not limited geographically anymore. You don't have to pay for travel fees. You don't have to worry about those logistics. So there's a lot of different openings for who paid you can have at your library and how you can change that. And then looking more and looking by age, and I know we have a lot of teen here and tween. So for babies, I think there can be bounces and short videos. A lot of people worry about how they're doing screen time with babies. And for me, what I try to say with the babies too is that if it's interactive, if they're seeing faces, then that is different than passive screen time when they're just watching Mickey Mouse Clubhouse or something. I have received text message tips from an organization in Boston, and their text message tips for early literacy for kids, and that's been helpful. Crafts and presents, kind of how we were talking about earlier with getting the story time pickup, that can be something good to have, and just having short videos. Something I always say with babies in general is that you're being an example for the parents, and this does not change digitally. For toddlers, having the music and movement still digitally. My 2-year-old has really embraced this Zoom programming, and he will get up from his computer and he's dancing and stomping and moving and running back and forth. And something we've done a lot for him, and I encouraged parents too, is having the screen up on the TV. And that can be really good for toddlers, is having it on the TV, and then your toddler can't just close it and run up to it. And that can be a good tip to give to toddlers. He's also liked watching the puppet shows and seeing that happen. So that's been really fun. Preschool is still looking into kindergarten readiness, what you can be for that. Keep doing the 1,000 books. If you can do it online, if you can do it on the phone, and character parties. I talked a little bit about how we did the Pig the Pancake, and kind of even having Pinkalicious, having different people on that screen. I've seen having the princess come and dress up. Something a lot of my friends did over the weekend was they did Paw Patrol live digitally though. And this was through Paw Patrol, but they had like the characters dressed up and digital, and the kids could watch them. And then they also had access to more activities for a week after. Oh, you were at Paw Patrol, Valerie? Hey. And something to remember is these kids don't even remember, especially the youngest ones. They don't remember the old normal. They don't remember a year ago. So this might be really hard for us to come to terms with, and doing something like this with your kids. But for them, they're still having this fun experience, and they're still learning and growing, which is great. And early elementary, I've seen just reading with our older kids, something that can still be fun that we do during the summer, is having older kids and younger kids together reading and working. And that's something you can do in Zoom breakout rooms. And also reading with a dog, reading with a bird, that can still be done online and kind of be a way to really develop those skills. And Tween and Teen, I know we have a lot of Tween and Teen people here today. And something I've looked to for that is people making TikToks. It still scares me, but I like looking at it for ideas and looking at it for what the teens are doing and what people are liking. And If people tackle that themselves, that's great too. If anyone has any stories about what they've done at TikTok, feel free to put it in. I found emoji book reviews have been fun, or also doing emojis to describe names. I've seen a lot of virtual advisory boards, and also one of my new libraries is doing a virtual volunteering for the teens this summer. And teens are able to pick between doing virtual and helping all virtually with logging and prizes, or also doing a hybrid format. And that's a way they can still get their volunteer hours and still help out. Trivia.
Hey, everybody. It looks like Emily froze for a second here. Let's see what happens. Or everyone else froze, and I'm fine.
Hi, I just froze. I'm on my phone now. Can you hear me here?
Yes, we can.
Yes. And what area did I cut off at? If anyone knows.
You were just getting into the tweens and TikTok.
And then, Rebecca, are you able to put my slides on? The fun. Because now I'm on my phone and my computer is trying, but technical, but we always have a plan B. And
That's right.
that is so important always. So, okay, I was talking about tween and teens and TikTok, and that, hold on, now I'm on 2.
Can you all see that?
Okay, now I'm back. Thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
We have a bit of a weird echo.
I just turned my phone off.
There we go. Okay.
If you can get me back to the slide, Rebecca, actually, if you can end sharing, I'm back now. If that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, apologies for the technical difficulties, but something to remember is it's okay. And it's going to happen and you're going to have problems. And I know it's hard.
Just like when something happens in a regular program, it's
Mhm.
there's no more or less judgment than if you're in a story time and somebody runs up and tips over your basket of stuff.
And that's what I think is even good if I have technical difficulties in this presentation, but because we are all human. And that's something we always need to remember. And I try to remind myself that every day. So back to Tween and Teen here is the TikTok for ideas, the emoji book reviews can be fun, or seeing what you think about a book using only emojis. And then I've seen a lot of libraries do virtual advisory boards and also virtual volunteering this summer, and seeing what they can do virtually and having teens kind of help that way, because they still want their volunteer hours and they still want to be involved. I've also seen a lot of trivia and using that for different fandoms, and then doing draw along, cook alongs, craft alongs, and kind of finding ways to do those tween and teen activities that you always like, being able to do them together and digitally. So also using what has become cool in the past year, Animal Crossing and Become Us. I know it's not cool to say cool, but using those and finding ways to meet together with the tweens and teens. And I know we have a lot of people here that are tween and teens. So if you have anything that's been successful, put it in the chat, or anything you've been struggling with, put it in the chat. And moving on to families, I think something that's important is remembering that most programs become family programs. And that is something huge, especially with being digital, is you're going to get people of all ages just kind of coming in. And sometimes I might be doing something that's not appropriate for all ages. And that's when I try to say, well, this is more of a teen thing. And if they want to be here, I can't stop them, but I am not responsible. And that is why some libraries have their disclaimers and having that available before the program or in the sign up, because you don't want to be held responsible. I've seen different displays being on virtually, having guessing games of different characters, also doing something like Nailed It, where everyone tries to make the same food item, where everyone tries to make something differently, and you can kind of see the pictures of what they all did. And that can be a fun family activity. And yes, Animal Crossing is a fun video game, and you can kind of visit other people's islands, and it's really taken off, and you can get a lot of information about it just looking. But people in that tween teen and even going up to adults are just really enjoying it. And I think this is a good time for self-reflection too, and about your programs, thinking about what you have done and seeing how you can revisit it. What did you have planned in the before? What did you have that just got scrapped? Because so many people had all their summer reading. They had everything in the plan. And is that something you can take those ideas and use again? Is there stuff you totally forgot about that could be great? Is there anything you tried early in the pandemic, in that time when we were trying everything, that it's worth trying again? Do you think you might have learned lessons that could make that easier? Also, what is not working? Are there any of your tasks you just totally dread that you cannot handle anymore, or that you're not getting anyone with? Think about that and think about why you're still doing it and if you're able to stop. And I've said this earlier, and I think it's so important, is what are you and your staff capable of doing? This pandemic burnout is real and it's huge, and there have been so many staff hiring freezes and everything. And try your best to not overextend yourself, and tell your boss what you are capable of doing. And I think what's important is that if what you do is quality and good for the kids, more than just trying to do everything and then have it not work out very much. And yes, Caitlin, I see that you stop doing the 2 story times and you get burned out, and that's good. And now your 1 crafty story time, which sounds fun, can probably be really high quality. So kudos for you, Caitlin. Who says kudos? I guess I do. Another thing to look at is, what does your individual population, what do they want and what do they need? And it's easy to just think about what's best for you, but is there something that they just could really see more need for? And I know right in the beginning, my book club kids were really just craving communication and craving something. And then what we did was we did 7 days, 7 Harry Potter books. And every night we did a book discussion of one of each of the 7 Harry Potters. And that was really fun. And they told me they really liked that marathon idea, and that they wanted to do that again, but like during summer or during like the spring break, kind of having like the binge book club and everything. And it's important to look at what is our new normal going forward, what is happening and what are we changing. And something I think is so important is all those old schedules, all those old plans that you had, those can be just thrown away, which is really important to remember. Because yes, like in your old library, you might have had baby story time on Mondays and toddler on Tuesdays and something else on Wednesdays. And what's important is to reevaluate all of that and get back to normal. Maybe one of your programs is virtual, maybe one of them is in person, and see what you're doing. Maybe one is hybrid, because everything has changed. Very few people, I would say no one, but someone's always going to remember. Very few people remember how you did it in the before. So that's what's important. And then I see about promoting and advertising. So I'll try to get to that. And then virtual burnout is something that is so true too. So I'll try to get to that in a minute. But what's important is that you make an informed decision and just do it, or whatever that means for your organization and your individual job title. So seeing what you really want to do program wise and what's important, and then talking to the people you need to talk to make that happen. And just seeing how you can work on that and how you can actually get to next steps. And then now we get into video editing softwares and streaming services, but I want to take a little moment before I get into that to see some of the questions we've had. And I see a lot about virtual burnout. And that is something that I think is definitely very, very true. And that's something that I think is good to look at how you can do virtual and then add on more components, like doing pickups or doing something that's seen outside afterwards and kind of that type of thing. And I think it's important to remember too that like breaks are okay. If you need to take a week off or something, talk to your manager, see how it can do. The week off for everyone, families too, can be something that is good. And talking about promoting and advertising these programs. I have a slide for that in a little bit. And looking at the program evaluations from patrons, that is something in every program. I encourage them to email any thoughts. Sometimes I'll take a minute at the end, especially with kids or teens or tweens, like, what did you like best? What was your favorite part? What did you not? And I know it's kind of the same ways we always did, is trying to talk and trying to get what they are doing and what they are liking, which can be even harder than it was before because now we're virtual and sometimes their screens are off. They log off right away. But it's important when you see people in the libraries to ask and to talk from 6 feet away, of course, but to get these relationships and try to get these information. And for program evaluation, something I've liked in Zoom, this isn't exactly evaluations, but something I've seen is a poll from people for programs and saying how many people are watching the program right now, and having that poll jump up either in the beginning or the end of the program, not in the beginning, sorry, in the middle or the end. Once everyone is there, can be a good way to really see an accurate count of how many people are at your program. And then with evaluations, it's getting that word of mouth feedback. I've seen some surveys being sent out. I've seen surveys after individual programs. And then I've also seen surveys that are sent out just about virtual programming in general. What are you looking for? What do you want? What are your needs? And I know certain libraries, it can be harder for surveys that you have to get a lot of approval, and it's really important. But I think seeing what your library can do and how you can do stuff even informally is important. So I think I caught up. And now, yes, we're on video editing softwares. There's so many different ones out there. There are ones that are really fancy and paid, like Final Cut Pro and Camtasia. There's also what comes on your computer. I'm a Mac user, so I have the iMovie, and that's what I've been using a ton of. And I really enjoy how user-friendly the iMovie is, and just how it does a lot for me and how many online tutorials I can see if I'm having problems. So that's been really helpful for me. And you see there's many, many out there, the web-based, the free on computer, the low cost. And I think what is important is see what capabilities you have at your library, what computers you're using, and then picking one and sticking to it. Hold on, my kid is resting, and I'm going to turn this off. All the fun from working from home, right? So looking at these virtual programming, looking at these softwares and seeing what's best. And Yeah, I think that for what so many libraries are doing, having something that is free is usually enough. And for just editing a simple video and trying to get subtitles or transitions. And something I would say a lot to my bosses is they wanted us to have professional quality, or just like this, we're watching a full production. And then I said, well, if you want us to have that, then maybe we need a lot more time to spend on it, because that's what's important. So I think you need to realistically think about how much time you have and how much quality you want. And that's something to look at as you're seeing. So I'm seeing Da Vinci has been good, Camtasia, iMovie. Yes, and another thing that's important to think about is it just you or one person doing the editing, or is it multiple people, and is it easier to use a consistent software and a consistent something for editing? And I know at my library there's an issue when some people were using iMovie and some people were using Windows Video Editor and some people were using Final Cut, and they struggled that way because then the videos were looking different. So that's definitely something to think about too. And then we move on to all the different streaming services. And there's so many options. We are on Zoom right now, and I love Zoom. And I think Zoom is the closest you can get to something that seems like an in-person program. And just having the interactions with people and being able to unmute and talk, to be able to talk in the chat, to be able to go into breakout rooms. And that's something I really like about Zoom, is it's kind of the closest to in-person. However, that doesn't work for everyone or every time. And streaming stuff on Facebook can be really helpful. Kind of going through using Facebook Premiere means you can already have the video and then have it kind of as a live program. And then also WebEx is something that can be close to Zoom, something where you can limit participants, something where you can kind of be in a closed room, which can be really helpful. And then YouTube is another great thing for just the pre-recorded and having stuff where you're having a passive program doing what they're doing. So those are all important looking at. And other ones I've heard of are using StreamYard, using GoToMeeting, and using Google Meet. And all of those you can look, have a bunch of different pros and cons. And I think what's so important too is you and your library, you don't need to just use one. You can look at what is best for that specific program and for those specific needs. Yes, I saw someone just mention Discord, and that's something I think can be good with the teens and tweens too, and having them be a part of it a little more, which is helpful. And moving on, I've been having fun with all the tools you can use. There are a lot of good ones there. And I think Canva can be really helpful for making stuff look clean and polished and kind of marketing style. You can make a lot there. And it's also good to look into Canva for nonprofits and what you can do with that. Google Classroom, I mentioned that before. It's something we use for a book club, and we were kind of able to make a central hub using Google Classroom. So kids could share resources and talk to each other when we're not in the actual book club. And then Bitmoji Classroom, a ton of teachers have been really using a lot. And that's where you create a classroom with your Bitmoji, and then you can click on books, you can click on items, and it takes you to digital resources, and it takes you farther. And then there's Class Click, which is another thing kind of like the Google Classroom, where asynchronously you can all do different things and kind of see things at a later time. And other resources I've been enjoying are Padlet, which is really visually fun, then also Flippity, and we've mentioned Discord a bunch of times here, but these can be other good tools that are really helpful. And I didn't make a slide. Oh no, I did, just kidding. So kind of tips and tricks are good where you think about what exactly you're doing and how you are doing your filming. And I think it's important to make your own setup and see what that means for you and having a set space that you're doing that programming. I mean, right now, this is me at home and my computer, I'm in our bedroom and my computer is on my laundry basket, but that actually works really nicely with the height and everything that I do virtual programming. However, if I'm doing something with actual children and people present, then I take my son's easel and I go in the basement and I have a poster, an Eric Carle poster in the back of it. And that kind of makes it more vibrant and good for things that like the children are seeing. And I think when you're doing these videos and everything, it's important to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. We've said that a bunch. It happens all the time. And it's also good to be yourself. Let your attitude shine through. You do that in a normal program, and that's important in virtual programming too. Is if some technological stuff is past your capabilities, that is okay. And if you work too hard trying to do it, then it could end up just being so much work and not a lot of feedback. Feedback's the word, not a lot of reward. And that's really good. Oh, and I've seen Rebecca talk about the circulating kits with tech for filming, tripods and ring lights. And that can definitely be really helpful. As I said here, it's good to invest in the equipment like mics and lights and stands, but you might all be able to. So talking to the state library can be very helpful that way. And yes, using a ring light has been helpful for me, kind of to get the natural light. I have one that I just put on my phone. And then also in one of my old libraries, we did it in a green screen room, and then we were able to use all the green screen lights and the photo lights, and that was able to make everything seem better. Another thing I've heard of that I don't like doing is giving the camera googly eyes, and that makes sure that you're looking straight at the camera and that you're looking the right way and not down or to the side or all over. And then something else that is helpful is using a document camera as a second camera. And that can be a way to show books closer up and to be able to see it. Another thing I've noticed is it can be hard when you're trying to hold a book or show something off. And I've seen people take pictures and scan in the books and show it online for reading, and doing things a little differently that way, which can be helpful. And then for tracking views, I have here follow guidelines, and that's where there can be so many different ways to count how many people are viewing something and how many people are at a program. And that's what I think is important, to make sure your organization has something consistent in play and that your organization is all following the same way. And Rebecca, I don't know if your state library has any rules.
I was just going to chime in. We are going to talk about this more in depth at our youth services managers meeting in May, because there have been some new guidelines that have come out from IMLS about how we are supposed to track our views, and we have a new data coordinator that's going to be figuring all of that out for us. So as far as what the state library will be collecting, that's going to look a little bit different this coming year than what we collected last year, because no one really had a thing. So it'll be, we're counting views instead of interactions, or we're counting, and what that looks like for each social media. But that's definitely something that you should be talking to your administration, and to your people. What do those all mean, and what is most helpful for you to know, beyond the numbers that you give us? So have those conversations with the rest of your team at your library to figure out, is it just views? How long of a view? Is that a 30-second view? Is it a 5-minute view? What does that mean? And what does that data then give you? If you're collecting views and you're seeing that everybody only watches for 30 seconds, then why are you posting a 15-minute video? That's what that means. And that's what that data can be used for.
Yes. Thanks, Rebecca. And now our next, going too far here, my bad, is we've talked about this a little too, is how to reach varying populations, how to promote and how to get to people. And I think it's important to use all of your digital tools. And sometimes it can seem really repetitive and people are getting the same thing 90 times, but people are on different areas. It's always important to have something on that central website landing page, but so many people see it on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, using the digital newsletter. Some organizations are still doing print newsletter. My former library stopped it when the pandemic came. And then one of my current libraries is still doing it. Every month they're doing a printed thing and they say people are still taking it. And then I meet them where you are is something that's important. And I before lived in an apartment complex, and a lot of times we would get flyers that would talk about digital and in-person programs that would be on the doors to our building. And then that's where it's important too to follow any rules or regulations. But that can be another way, is just having advertisements where these people are going to see it, and where partnering with the schools can be really helpful in reaching out and building individual relationships with school librarians or public librarians, depending on who you are. And word of mouth is something that is so much even more important during this pandemic, and talking to people. And I had a lot of people, once we opened our doors again, that didn't realize I was still doing book club, or didn't realize the different options, or that they could see stuff on YouTube too. So you might feel like you're repeating yourself 10 million times over. However, someone might have never heard that before. And I always joke that I'm just a librarian everywhere I go, because I find myself at the haircut, at the grocery store, telling people what we offer, telling people what we have, and talking to them about it. And that can be a huge way to just reach the different people. And it seems obvious to us, everything a library has, but not exactly them. And we've talked a little about how it can be hard to reach people digitally. It can be hard for people that don't always have the access. And a lot of libraries already were and are circling Wi-Fi hotspots, and those are even more important right now. And those are something that is so huge to give to families that need them. Also, finding ways to partner and work with the school, seeing what devices they are giving out, seeing if you can help supplement that at all is important. There can be ways to put programs, to put videos on flash drives, and then people can watch it that way if they don't have a digital connection. Also having printable versions, printable rhymes for parents, printable questions about a book that people can use. And then I've also seen for Zoom and digital in general is just having office hours where people can talk and try to go over Zoom or over this digital programming. I've also seen frequently asked questions that help with that simple Zoom, which can be really helpful. And that can all be ways to just work with these people that are struggling in this digital world. And something that's important to remember in everything we do is accessibility, and not to forget it. And that is something that I think is why virtual programming is so important and needs to keep going, is that because this is a way you can be accessible to people that can't get out of the house, who can't go to as much, but are able to now when they have that option to do things on their own time. And having different time frames available and having recorded versions, and even seeing once you go back, can you record a video of what you're doing? Can you play it later? Can you do something hybrid? What can you do? And subtitles are important, and we didn't have those today, so I apologize, but their Zoom is starting to roll out free subtitles, and you can do an automatic version with them. They don't work as well with different languages and accents, but they work pretty well with English. And there's also Subtitle and Rev and Otter transcripts. Some are paid. The paid versions do better, but that can be a great way to offer accessibility and help people understand everything just a little more. And then copyright, the great question and all the fun and the biggest struggle. And something people always want me to give a very firm answer on copyright, and that's so hard. So I'm sorry. But my biggest thing here is that there's so many varying ideas of what fair use means. It's so hard with all these publishers constantly changing things with a pandemic. And it's also important to think about what you're doing to have something consistent with your library and to stick with that. And I very much think that if you're doing a not recorded story time, if you're doing something on Zoom, you're doing a program, that you can use the same rules as in person, that you can read a book, and if it's not being recorded, it's okay. And that is my strong belief. But if something is recorded, then you really need to go with the publishers on this. And audio can be taken down, things can get in trouble. And going off of that way is I have a document else in my documents that kind of links to a lot of different publishers and what they're doing. A lot have extended permissions until the end of June. And something I think is that they should just keep going forever because of the copyright. However, we'll see what happens. They keep extending and they need to realize that virtual never ends. However, there's always the public domain if you're doing something that's recorded. Can you do fairy or folk tales? Can you adapt something as a puppet show, original content, nursery rhymes, which does leave you more restricted, but is a way to keep you and your library out of trouble, which is so important. So that's what I have for copyright. I wish I had all the copyright answers, but don't we all? And as you're moving forward and learning more and doing everything, something I've relied so much during all of this is networks. And there are so many amazing librarians and amazing people out there and amazing ideas on Pinterest. There's the Ulsk blog, there's Storytime Underground on Facebook. There's Twitter and libraries, and there's so many people. I've made amazing connections on the internet, and it's really nice to have a network and be able to ask questions, ask if you're confused about something, ask if you're uncomfortable, and going from there and then learning and improving with your network and having fun. Because we all started working in libraries for different reasons, but it's important that it's fun, and we don't want this pandemic and virtual to suck all the fun of it. And what I have that I'll send after SCL Children's Services is a page that does a lot of links to the publisher pages, so then you can see their latest updates. And that's what's been really helpful for me, is to be able to just click at that publisher and see what they have done the most recently. And okay, 158. Okay, did my little wand go well? I know I tried to answer a lot of questions as we were going through, but now is a great time for any questions you have, anything I didn't cover, you want to learn more about, anything you're still thinking. There's a lot of information, and I really appreciate having you all here. You can type the questions in the chat if anyone wants to go on to and unmute. That's okay. I'm going to stop my sharing. Now I can see better. I see Jessica Lopez here is untraditional virtual programs I've offered. And oh, a virtual 5K, that seems really fun. And yeah, I've seen them in different areas, but I haven't actually done one. So that's pretty cool. Untraditional, if anyone has an untraditional one, think about that a little bit too and put it. What was my one that was the most unique? I'm going to keep thinking too. And I'm seeing the online update. So thank you. And this isn't totally, but I've seen some libraries do some viewings of movies using Netflix Party and using the group watch, and even doing like a virtual and interactive movie environment where everyone does something. And that can be hard looking at how many people and what you're doing with that. But I think that's kind of an untraditional but still fun way of doing the program and kind of switching outside the box a little bit. And I'm looking through too for some past questions because I know there's so many. We talked about dial a story and the questions about that. And as Rebecca said, looking at the publisher rules and everything. Same as recording a book, which is good, yes. And that's where I think the public domain really comes in help for that one. And then, did you have any questions you wanted me to answer, Rebecca?
No, I think we were getting them as we went along.
We talked about how we promote and advertise these programs, and that's something I wanted to stress too, is it's a lot of the same of how you're doing with in-person and everything, and pushing it out as much as you can. And even though it's not an in-person program, you're still doing all the same ways, and word of mouth and digital mediums and any guides. And I know now that more information is coming out about like having things on paper or handing things out, people are going back to that printed information.
Yeah, because we've seen that surface transmission risks are very low finally. We have the science to back that up, so that's reassuring.
Yes.
So Amanda asked a question about advice for getting attendees to interact with each other.
Oh, that's a good question too. And I know I mentioned a little, like with my virtual field trips, is having a poll on Zoom. And that's something you need to activate through the big Zoom, like kind of the online side. But having polls can be kind of fun because then they just have to press it and they don't necessarily have to say anything. So that can be a way to go, or even kind of how I had at the beginning, that word cloud, that can be another way to participate where they're not actually talking. I also try to say, use the chat. I also just, it can just be totally pulling teeth depending on how old they are or what the mood is. And do they even want to be in this program, or is it just their parents? But those are some ideas that I have. And yes, and I know, going off of the not wanting to unmute, I'm also looking on breakout rooms for advice. And I also know that myself personally, I say that breakout rooms can be good and that they can, but if I'm in like a meeting or a training and it goes to breakout rooms, sometimes I'm like, okay, I gotta go take care of my kids. Bye.
Yeah, sometimes that's helpful and sometimes that isn't. I forget who was talking about it. It was one of the trainings that we had maybe, or one of the numerous webinars that I feel like I've watched over the last year. They do like a silly hat day and everybody comes in a silly hat, and then you have to turn on your camera so you can show off your silly hat or your mask or your whatever, and that tends to encourage a little bit more interactivity.
And that I've seen too is kind of silly hat, or like show and tell, show a stuffed animal you have, or show off your pets. Pets has been big with my older kids too. We want to see your cat, we want to see your dog, and that type of thing. And kind of a way to interact a little more.
We had another question about what libraries that you look at for inspiration.
Yes. For me is I like Facebook is what I'm on a lot in general. So seeing stuff people put on like different Facebook groups. I'm in Storytime Underground, and I'm in one for programming ideas for librarians and kind of using things from there. And then I like to just go online, kind of, I'll go to like the big libraries in each city, looking at like Boston or New York, and then I can see their calendar and like what they're putting and then putting on there. And that's kind of a way I look and kind of see what is happening.
Oh, Maggie, that's an interesting question.
The success of a program and how many views.
There's a lot. There's a lot in that, Emily. Go ahead.
So maybe Rebecca wants to go a little bit after me, but something I really say is I am really notorious with my bosses too, is like anything in the chat, I will copy and paste and be like, this person said this, like take a look, and asking people in person, please tell me. And like, if there's something more you want, leave a comment, do something, because we're not going to know. And I know something as I become a user is that I try to leave more comments and information, because then I find out it's kind of like an effect that then someone else is more likely to do if one is already there, and that type of thing. And then for views on a video, that can just be so hard. And do you have any more on that, Rebecca, from your state library standpoint?
It is tough. I think we need to look at it from a realistic perspective, because it's not just, it can't be in comparison to your in-person programming. So if you were doing an in-person story time that you got 35 people at, parents and kids, and then you do a virtual story time and you got 5 views. Well, those views were not necessarily just one person. If you're assuming that it was a family that was watching, or at least a parent and a child, that's times 2. But you also have to look at how many people in your community had access to watch that. Did they hear about it? Could they get online? Do they have a device that actually has enough broadband to show video? So success is based on all of these other different parameters. I've heard a number of people talk about how difficult it is to get teens to a program, and maybe they only get 1 or 2. I mean, come on now. I've worked for a lot of libraries where teen programming, and you've got 1 or 2 teens in a in-person program. That was a good number, because you were meeting the needs, providing the space for those 1 or 2 teens. So the fact that you're getting them online should be just as successful. So there again, I mean, it really varies by your community and what you're providing and what they have access to. How do you, success for Charleston County Library is going to look different than success for Marion County Library. There's 200,000 less people and 200,000 less broadband. So I can't answer that question.
Well, and I
I
think
can help you think about it on an individual basis.
Mhm. Rebecca put that well, and kind of going off of the 2-person, and that's what's important to remember is you had programs that I had programs that didn't have anyone attend when it was in person, which was really hard. And then there are so many factors that no one came on this day. And also thinking too is sometimes if we had no one come to an in-person program, we would maybe do it again and change the time and change. And that's something, if it's a closed video too, can you put it again? And that's something at one of my old libraries, we did Niche Academy for our recorded videos. And then if there was one that only got like 4 views, we really pushed to just have it again then like a month or 2 later, because realizing people probably didn't see it, and even if it's the same one, would they have remembered? So that can be a way with less time and all the prep and still being able to see it, if that helps at all.
And marketing is just super important, especially if you're so close to the public and you don't have people coming in. How's that information getting out there? They're not coming in and they're not picking up the flyer. They're not looking at your website. I can guarantee we've been doing these parent focus groups in another project of mine, and they are not looking at your website. So how are you getting that information? Is it in the newspaper? Is it in the radio? Is there, are you throwing a flyer into every book that is picked up on a hold? Or can you do that? Can you consider doing that?
I recently moved, and the library I have, my public library now, did the USPS mailers. So
I love
every house
those.
gets the mailers. They're
Yeah,
like
it's
18 cents.
expensive, but I have to say, I think that it's worth it.
And then we put it up and we're looking at it, and we're a crazy library family, so we're still looking anyways, but it still helped us. And I know I'm an extreme user. So.
Okay, I am going to stop the recording.